So continuing with the coverage of the Vallis Undermind content, today we're going to be looking at one of the 4 augments that got introduced, which is for Lavos, and it is called Lingering Transmutation. But not only that, this update also brought a new arc gun and some updates to arc weapons that synergize really well specifically with Lavos and his kit. So today is more than just an augment setup, it's also leaning into that arc gun update as well. Lavos just has some new toys to play with, and he's even better than he was before. Lingering Transmutation is an augment for Lavos. By sending out his 3rd skill, it will return to the location that you casted it after it's hit its max distance, and then it will remain at that location for 15 seconds. You can also recast this or recall the probe to cause that cooldown again. Now at face value this doesn't seem very good at all because Transmutation Probe isn't some sort of high damage ability, however it is a core part of Lavos' kit. Transmutation Probe directly synergizes with Lavos' passive, which if you are unaware, Universal Orbs when picked up by Lavos grant him status immunity. Transmutation Probe as an ability has several effects. One of course is that it does electric damage as the probe itself, and you can hold it down to imbue said element. It will shock enemies, and those enemies that are shocked not only drop universal orbs, but they also make enemies drop ammo, including the type of ammo that synergizes with arc guns. Arc guns can only regenerate ammo from heavy ammo pickups, and the final part of this ability is that it reduces the cooldown of his other skills, which in my opinion is the best element about it, and the augment as well. It's effectively extending the duration and usage of the Transmutation Probe. You can have your regular cast, you're going to send it out and you're going to reduce those cooldowns of your other skills, amongst all the other uses we already mentioned, but then once it's recalled to the location that you casted it, which preferably, if you're smart, you would put it in an area where enemies are funneling in through. So for example, if you're in a high density mission or survival, a corridor where maybe enemies are coming through frequently, you plant it there and you could go elsewhere, and for that extended duration that it's even recalled to, it's going to be reprocking that electricity on enemies, constantly giving you a reduction to your cooldowns. This pretty much means that Lavos is turning into even more of a caster Warframe. However, this is mainly limited to missions where there is good enemy density. So if you can find an area where enemies are funneling in, it's where the augment shines. Now that's the main augment synergy, but with this Warframe update we also got something else involving not only a new arc gun, but also the ability to put on primary and secondary arcanes, one of each at the same time on all of your arc guns. So across the board they are just stronger now. However, Noko's new signature arc gun, the Arbrucep, is a heavily status focused weapon where each shot does a different type of status, and then you can mod it as well to proc even more, making it a really good nuke when you combine it with the correct arcanes, but at the same time it's a really good primer which makes Lavos' kit stronger, because if we're leaning into that caster playstyle of mashing our 4th ability with those reduced cooldowns from Lingering Transmutation and spamming all of our skills proccing elements everywhere, then nuking enemies with that 4th ability because it has the condition overload effect, if we're using an arc gun that procs more status, we're just going to be doing a bunch of damage. That's not where the synergies end. As I was talking about earlier with the heavy ammo, Transmutation Probe also causes enemies to drop that heavy ammo, allowing you to refresh the ammo on your arc guns. So with this setup, you can be a caster with Lavos, but also focus on your arc weapon. It's an incredible synergy, and me personally I very rarely use arc guns in this game, so being able to have one out at all times and refresh that ammo at the same time being on a satisfying caster frame like Lavos, this is one of the more fun setups I think has come with the update. And then of course Lavos in general is really good with his other augments as well. We can imbue any element we want onto our arc gun with his augment, so Valence Formation is going to be contributing to our status procs that also contribute to our 4 damage. Every single thing is bouncing off of one another. An important note is that I think this augment is mainly playstyle focused. It isn't that necessary. His Swift Bite augment is also good at reducing your cooldown, and dare I say I slightly prefer that playstyle. But in terms of effectiveness and how much we can cast, Lingering Transmutation is arguably better, and I'm sure plenty of you are going to try to fit all 3 augments in the build at once. That is possible. For me personally, this is how I set them up. Corrosive Projection in the aura is optional. You could use something like Brief Respite if you want to go to higher levels. For our augments we of course have Lingering Transmutation and Valence Formation. Stretch and Aug Reach for our range. You could forego a bit of range if you want to use the 3rd augment, but I do think range is really important for Transmutation. Archon Continuity and Archon Vitality because they work really well with this kit. Adaptation and Health Conversion for some survivability. You can use Umbral Fiber instead of Health Conversion if you don't like it. And then Arcane Ice Storm and Arcane Impetus for more ability strength and ability duration. Ice Storm can be easily procced with your second skill, and then Impetus with just fucking everything because it requires all those different elements. And then we can use Cunning Drift and the Aura for more range because we don't need Prime Sure-Footed on a Warframe with a passive that can give you immunity to knockdowns and status effects. Now for the Arbuset build, I'm using Primary Merciless and Innovate. Then I'm throwing in Hollow Bullets to combine with Innovate for that crit damage. It's not a heavy crit weapon, but Innovate fixes this problem. And then I'm throwing in Viral Heat to combine with all the other elements on the list. As you can see on the side here, each individual shot. They're all adopting different elements, so it's really good for priming. And then of course you can use the prime version of Rubber Dude Iron Barrel. Mine is not leveled because I never really invested too much in art guns, but I'm gonna have to now. And then for other additions to the build, I'm of course once again using Sling Strength from Madurai and Power Transfer for casting speed and strength. Then a no-brainer companion for me whenever I'm using Lavos is the Nautilus, because that grouping is going to allow your fourth ability to do way more damage because you're constantly priming enemies, and if they're closer together, it's going to make use of those blast procs if you're choosing blast or gas or toxin, fire, whatever it is. The closer the enemies are together, the better it's going to be. And then I'm using a Verglas Prime as per usual. This is also going to be spreading status and doing a shit ton of damage at the same time. Just a lethal combination with Lavos. And let's finally talk about the Arc and Shards I'm using on Lavos. Casting speed are an absolute must-have in my opinion, especially because this is a more focused caster setup. Then I've got a Corrosive status shard, not overly necessary, but we're going to be proccing a lot of Corrosive, especially with Arc and Continuity when we're just proccing Toxin, just reduces enemies' armor even further. And finally I've got 2 Toxin shards for even more damage when I'm proccing Toxin. I really like imbuing my fourth ability with this. They're not necessary, they're just for more DPS overall. I'd highly recommend you give them a try. So yeah, Lavos is looking even better than he was before, and it's not just because of his new augment. He's one of the best frames to use with any art gun. Make sure you check out the previous videos on both Noko and Oberon since the update. Like and sub if you've enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.